tal? ¿Cómo están ustedes? Un gusto saludarlos nuevamente. Soy Consuelo Saavedra y a nombre de Itaú les doy la bienvenida a este capítulo especial de fin de año de Visión de Líderes. Nuestra invitada es una figura legendaria del deporte a nivel mundial. Su nombre es parte fundamental de la historia del tenis. Ganó 18 torneos Grand Slam en individuales, 31 torneos en dobles, majors también. Es un referente dentro de la cancha y también afuera por su labor como activista, por los derechos de la comunidad LGBT y también por la igualdad de trato para hombres y mujeres en el deporte en general y en el tenis en particular. Es una mujer acostumbrada a competir en las grandes ligas al mayor nivel de exigencia con todo lo que eso implica en términos tanto físicos como psicológicos. Y por eso estamos seguros que conversar con ella no solo va a ser apasionante por su experiencia, sus anécdotas, su historia, todo lo que ha logrado, sino también por las lecciones que podemos aprender de su trayectoria para conseguir, las metas que cada uno de nosotros tiene, que cada uno de nosotros se propone. Y como si todo esto fuera poco, es primera vez que habla así, de tú a tú, con el público chileno, así que también eso es algo para celebrar. Saludamos entonces a la gran y única Martina Navrátilová. Martina, thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor.
Thank you very much for having me. I was going to wear, being Christmas, I was going to wear this sweater
Oh
today.
my gosh, an ugly Christmas sweater.
I for the first time, I splurged and I bought a bunch of sweaters, silly Christmas sweaters for the family. So we'll be wearing it Christmas Day.
I love it. Does it have any lights or something? I love those, the ones that have lights.
I have another one with lights and variety.
I love that. That's so great. So thank you for starting on a seasonal note, I would say. So my first question it's kind of very broad, but I kind of hint that the answer is probably also very profound. Martina, what does tennis mean for you? What has it meant for your life?
I think I hear Lulu on the other side of the door. I may have to go get her. Tennis. It was love at first sight, really. I just always loved it. Even just hitting against the wall and then getting on a court and then competing. It always kept me fascinated, no matter what. And that's Lulu. Hang on a second.
Va a ir a buscar Lulu. Lulu es su perra y es un personaje. Si revisan las redes sociales de Martina, la van a ver. Es un imperdible. La vamos a conocer, así que es todo un privilegio. ¡Hey, Lulu! ¡Hola, bonita! How are you?
So well anymore, but she always finds me in the
Does she
house.
speak Spanish?
She doesn't. She has selective hearing in many languages.
Well, thank you, Lulu, for joining us. Gracias por sumarte a nuestra conversación. So you were telling us that it was really love at the first sight.
Yeah, always. I mean, it was in my family, but I loved it. If anything, my parents were like, don't stay on the wall so much, because I loved it from the very beginning. But when I first started playing, it was just about competing, and then about 8, I wanted to win Wimbledon. There was no money in it back then. So it was really just love of the game that kept me motivated, wanting to be number one, etc. And then what tennis has given me is an amazing life because of the money that I was able to make. Eventually, not initially, but then it's grown. So I've gone through that time period in time when in tennis where there was no money. To if you turn pro, maybe you made a little bit, but that was only the men, not the women. So most women players would stop when they were 21, 22, and they had to get a real job. So I never had a real job thanks to tennis. So it has given me an amazing life, bit of a circus life, moving from city to city, nomadic life as we all are. But it's all the same people you see, but they move from town to town. I know more people from tennis by name than anywhere else, because as it turned out, I moved a lot in my life, different cities. Yes. So it really gave me an anchor. Tennis was always an anchor for me, and it started out that way, and it's still there because I still commentate and love it. I'm still learning, so it always kept me on my toes. Yeah.
And you mentioned something that you always wanted to compete. Did you just say that? But where did the drive come to eventually become the number one? Was that a goal from the very beginning for you?
Well, and when you're 8 years old, you don't know how big the world is. I wanted to win Wimbledon, but I still didn't know what it really meant. And then later, I wanted to be number one. But the competition was always with myself. I was always competing with myself. I would ride a bicycle around our garden on a path and was timing myself to see how fast I could go and to see if I could go faster next time. I would try to throw the snowballs, at a tree and see how many times in a row I can hit the tree from a certain distance. So I was always competing with myself. But then, in tennis, you're only as good as your opponent. Yeah. So in track and field, you race against time or you try to jump higher or further. But tennis, it's the other person. It's very gladiatorial, but I didn't recognize that much. But I always wanted to be challenged. And you can only be challenged by playing against the best players. And then I ended up being, the best of the best for a while. But for me, it was always trying to be the best that I can be, whatever that's good for. I was lucky enough that it was good enough to be number one, but there can only be so few number ones, right? So I was the lucky one. A lot of hard work, a lot of talent, all of that came together. But for me, the competition was internal, not external.
What has been the biggest sacrifice and also, on the other hand, the biggest reward in your career?
So growing up, I did not play that much tennis. Even when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, I played 1 hour a week indoors and maybe an hour most days outdoors and playing sets or, playing doubles with friends. It wasn't a serious thing. I didn't really play like 2 hours in a row until I was like 14 years old. So it's much different now. Kids really don't have much of a growing up is much different. Their childhood is all about tennis. Tennis is a big part of it, but I still had a normal childhood. I still did everything all the other kids were doing, but I also played tennis. So it didn't really affect me. So the sacrifice wasn't initially. The sacrifice came when I left my country in 1975 because the federation was not going to let me play. The government was not going to let me leave the country when I wanted to. And that was a sacrifice, leaving my family behind. Did not see my mom for 4 years. Didn't see my dad and my sister for 5 years. Exactly. If I went back there, they would not let me back out again. So that was one of the options. So when I left, it was a one-way ticket. And yeah, so that was rough. That was a very difficult time. So that was the sacrifice.
And we're talking the 70s. I mean, now maybe for the young people who are watching us now, I mean, they cannot even think how that was. I mean, it was just letters forever, and I mean, and with the Czech regime, maybe not even letters. So, I mean, and telephone calling was a hassle too. So it's a whole different world.
Yeah, it's a completely different situation. I mean, to call my home, I had to order the phone call, and maybe 2 hours later I would get it.
Exactly.
And you had to put the whole day around the phone call. And some days it didn't come through, some days it did. So that was a small part of it. So yeah, I think you can relate it maybe to what the Russians are going through now, that they can't really travel freely.
Yeah.
And because of their own regime, but because the world doesn't want them anywhere. For us, it was the country wouldn't let us. We were welcome everywhere, but the country wouldn't let us out. So it was like a giant prison for 13 million people back then. And I mean, we have that kind of stuff. You see what's happening in China. There's a tennis player, Peng Shuai, that wasn't able to get out of the country.
Yes.
So, the more times change, the more they stay the same. Like shows anyway. So
and the reward.
The reward is, of course, then becoming the best that I could be, living my life in truth. As a gay woman, that would have also been difficult in Czechoslovakia or now Czech Republic. But most of all, achieving my dream of becoming number one, winning Wimbledon, and and being the best tennis player that I could possibly be, having the freedom. That was the reward. I know I would not have won as much if I didn't leave. I don't know how much worse it would have been, but it definitely would not have been the same.
And how were you able to perform such a high level for so many years. And then you won Grand Slams for 12 years, playing singles in a row, far longer playing doubles, far longer doing mixed doubles until, I don't know, 2000 and something. So that's almost 30 years or 27 years. How were you able to achieve that, to, perform at that level?
Yeah, and it's actually, when you count it, 73 was my first mixed doubles title, and 2006 was my last one. Ooh. So it's like 33 years apart.
Amazing.
I was planning to be the youngest one to win, and I'm the oldest one that won a major. But it was self-imposed drive that I was always supported by my family. I was never put down or nobody put the brakes on me. My parents were always very supportive and say, go for it, whatever you can do. I climbed trees, and my mom was a bit nervous, but she still didn't tell me not to climb it because she trusted me. So I was always supported in what I was doing, and I believed in myself, and I just didn't never stop. So yeah.
What has changed in women's tennis and in the industry from the time you were winning all these majors for 30 plus years?
Everything changed again. When I started, there was no money. Some pros made money, but it was and then tennis became open in '68. That really opened up gates for the growth of the game. And then in the '70s, late '70s, the rackets changed. We started playing with metal rackets. There were some metal rackets they played with earlier, but they were not working very well. You couldn't control it. So we went from wood to rackets that were much more powerful, much more forgiving. And then in the late 1990s, when Guga Curtin won the French Open, he started playing with a nylon string, which puts a lot more spin on the ball. And that's why the tennis that you see today is so different, because of the strings as well as the rackets. The sweet spot on the old wooden racket was maybe as big as the bottom of this water bottle. I mean, it's like this, 3, maybe 8-9 centimeters is the sweet spot radius. So you had to hit the ball very linearly, very controlled. Now, the sweet spot is the whole racket. As long as you don't touch the frame, you're good. You're going to hit a good shot. So it's much more forgiving, and that's why you see completely different stroke production because of the racket. And then the strings allow you to put all this spin on it. You see balls going sideways.
Yeah.
I can do things with the ball now that I couldn't do 30 years ago, 40 years ago, because of the equipment. So that's changed so much. Another massive change, of course, has been social media. Tennis becoming much more international. You have players from many more countries competing, which is great. Both boys and girls, men and women. It's much more diverse. We have a lot more people of color succeeding and playing. So it reflects the world much better. We still don't have enough people from Africa playing, other than Ons Jabeur, who's now number 2 in the world, from Tunisia. But she's the lone African, really, at the top. So Africa is the last continent to kind of get into the sport, but overall it's so much more international, and it's fantastic.
And in terms of gender equality, has it been achieved in tennis, or is there still work to be done in your opinion?
Of course, there's still work to be done. For example, they're playing some exhibitions now. The guys are playing in Saudi Arabia, and we know what happens to women in Saudi Arabia. So there's still many countries where women don't have equal rights. They can't even vote. They can't, maybe they can drive a car now, but it's still a lot of oppression. And of course, overall in the world's economy, the purse strings, the money still is in control of men, and they're much more likely to give that money to men than women. So it's always an uphill battle for women athletes to get equal recognition, equal time in the media, and equal money. Tennis has been on the forefront of that, particularly in the majors. But we have equal prize money in all the slams. But overall, men still make more money because they get bigger sponsors deals for their tournaments, as well as individual sponsors for clothing or rackets or outside of tennis endorsements. But
it has been. But as you were saying, it has been in the forefront. I mean, women's tennis has played a big role in the struggle for women's rights.
Massive role. I think we were fighting for equal rights for women here in America, and tennis kind of pushed it further forward. When Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs, it's like, hey, women's lib, and all of that. And then we finally achieved the equal prize money, and women tennis players at least were as famous as men tennis players. But maybe that's not the case in other sports. Certainly not in the world of business. So it's still dominated by men, mostly white men. Around the world, maybe not around the world, but certainly in Europe and in America, but overall men. There are very few women heads of state in positions of power, but it is changing. It's just taking time.
What is it with? Yeah, sorry. What were you saying?
No, but tennis has definitely been on the forefront of this battle.
What is it with women's tennis players that are so brave? Because I've been thinking, I mean, you were a champion speaking out about your sexuality, and you just mentioned it when no one did back then. Serena Williams has changed the game in terms of when it comes to race, also to maternity. Osaka has been super vocal about mental health issues. So there is something to be said there about women players and the leadership and role models and challenging the status quo.
Let's not forget about Coco Gauff and Iga Swiatek, other women players really being active on the social issues front.
Yeah.
Whether it's with what's going on in Ukraine or human rights issues, civil rights issues here in America, Coco Gauff has been very vocal. As has been Naomi Osaka. I think women, we have to fight for everything. It doesn't come easily. Being an athlete, every single boy is encouraged to do sports. Girls have to fight for it. So many times they have to fight their own family to let them compete in whatever sport, particularly if it's more of a physical sport, right? Figure skating, great, but rugby or football, maybe not. Boys are always encouraged to do that. So we're used to fighting, and that's just sports. Everywhere else, there's so many fields that are just really male exclusive. Whether it's tech or even medicine, there was lawyers. There were so few lawyers 50 years ago. Women have to fight so much that it kind of comes naturally. We're not afraid of losing anything because we really don't have anything. I think when sports. Regarding coming out, I think it's a little easier for women in the locker room because there's no threat to the women. I think guys, it's a little different in macho world of sports. It would be more difficult for a gay man to come out while they're still competing. But I think overall, women really are braver in a way because they've had to be.
And how was the process for you to become an activist for the causes that you care about? And with something so personal at the very beginning, telling the world that you were gay.
Yeah, I know I could still play tennis, so I wasn't gonna lose my job. So you have to take it from everybody's perspective is different because they may lose their job, they may be thrown out of their house. Depends if people are safe or not. I was going to be safe, and I was still going to be able to play tennis. Maybe I would not get the endorsements, which I did not get.
Exactly, the sponsorships and all that.
But I could still play. So that was more important to me. Being myself was more important than money. I never played for the money. It was a great bonus, of course, that I'll take it, but it was not the reason why I played. So it never occurred to me that I won't come on because it'll cost me money in the long term. And it personally, it's just a freeing experience where you don't have to hide, you don't have to pretend, etc. But I've lost what I was going to say originally. What was the other part of the question?
No. So how was the process for you to become an activist and in such a personal cause?
Right.
At the end of the day.
I always fought for the underdog. Even when I was little, if a kid was bullied, I would beat up the other boy. Nobody messed with me, by the way. I was always able to hold my own, at least in my age group, and I was always fighting for the underdog, whether it was kids or animals, protecting the ones that can't protect themselves, as well as old people. I was always opening doors or helping an old lady across the street. Always had that caring about what goes on with other people that have a disadvantage of whatever for whatever reason. So I was always fighting environment. I was maybe because I grew up in a small town. I was in the woods. on a daily basis. I was skating on the river and swimming in it in the summer. I was very active outdoors, so I had a connection to Mother Earth that maybe most city people certainly don't have. So I was always involved with the environmental causes, and of course then LGBT rights. That came pretty naturally because that's who I am.
Yeah, and then you have to overcome too many prejudice. But then about
of course. So I never got thrown out of a restaurant, but my friends have been thrown out of a restaurant. So they said, we don't want the likes of you here. But didn't happen to me. I think because they knew who I was, that they had to be nicer to me. I've had a couple slurs, but overall no. But where I felt it was playing. When I was playing, I did not get the support from the public. I think for the most part because of my sexuality. Chris, at least before the match, when you come out, who gets the biggest ovation? It's the big stars, right? Not Nadal, no Djokovic, Federer. Chris would get it, but when I came out, it was muted. Some people were even whistling or jeering or booing. So it wasn't because they didn't like my tennis, right? So yeah, I felt like the visiting team, and I think a lot of it had to do with maybe being gay. And it changed in the 90s as acceptance of LGBT people rose in the public, and people realized that, we're not crazy or horrible people. The acceptance of me playing tennis also, the support definitely rose in a big way. And then I think at the end they were just feeling sorry for me because I was so old. They were cheering for me. Like, what a great shot she look at there. When I take shot 30 years ago, they're like, oh, okay. I hit a normal shot. Now I'm like, wow, that was amazing.
Martina, in terms of diversity and inclusion, now there is all this very contentious issue, I would say, about transgender athletes and whether transgender women can compete with biological women. And you have very strong thoughts about that.
Yes, I have. And by the way, I have many trans women friends, including Renee Richards, who was my coach, who agree with me on this issue because they know that the advantage is there, the male biological advantage that comes with puberty, and even before puberty, but particularly during puberty, you cannot take it away no matter what you do chemically. And then there's a lot of people that are pushing for all inclusion with no mitigation whatsoever. You just declare self-ID. I identify as a woman. So you go into the women's field and you can compete. And of course, the advantage is all there. So many different ways. The skeletal structure, much more lined up for men, the hips that are narrower, bigger lung capacity, the muscles, the strength is off the charts, particularly for explosive sports. 5-inch advantage, about 12 centimeters taller men are, which in most sports is an advantage, unless you want to be a jockey, which, tall men don't become a jockey, but in most sports it's a big advantage.
Yeah.
Not to mention the windpipe, even the windpipe, which you don't even know. The airway through which you get air, with men, is 25 to 50% larger for men than women.
I didn't know.
Exactly. So they get more oxygen. So the advantage are just so everywhere. And the testosterone, you can lower it down, but still most of the advantage is still there. And in sports, when in a track and field, but when 2 centimeters make a difference in the long jump or the speed events, anything explosive, I think the advantage is less in long distance, like marathons or ultra marathons, but still, men are still, I don't know, like 15 minutes faster in the marathon than women. So it's obviously not a fair fight for biological, males and females. I mean, females and women and girls competing against biological men. All I want to include in every walk of life.
It's hard to square the circle because
maybe eventually we'll have a third category, non-binary, everything comes. But it's interesting that there's even some trans men athletes, but they're still competing against women because they have not taken any testosterone, so they're welcome. So this is not a transphobic issue at all. It's an issue of fairness. We welcome trans men to play against women if they have not taken any drugs, because it's a level playing field biologically. And trans women want to play as women because I think they have a much better chance of winning. I'm not saying that they want to win, well, they want to compete.
That will be that will be the result anyway.
Right.
Most likely, yeah.
And some people are even saying just abolish our categories and just it's a free fall award. Then women would never win. Women would never get on the podium. So maybe one day we'll have either all-inclusive and then biological women only, or we have 3 categories: men, women, and non-binary. And maybe that group will grow and grow, and it's going to be as big as what we have right now with just the men and women. It is very tricky, but like I said, I have many trans women friends who agree with me on this because they know it's not fair. And and what happens with a lot of girls and women, they just stop competing because they realize they can't win. People say, well, it's not that many trans women that are competing, but the number is only going to go up, and there's enough of them that have won those prizes. So it's so difficult because you want to be inclusive. I had this group 3 years ago wanting to include as many trans women as possible with proper mitigation. But what we have found through talking with scientists and people that have studied this for decades, you really cannot take that advantage away. And, I've been called all kinds of names for this, but I'm like, you want to call Renee Richards transphobic? People obviously can't do that. So calling names doesn't help. We're trying to find a solution. But it needs to start from point of fairness and safety for the women and the girls. That has to be the number one priority, not include and then hope that it's safe. That doesn't.
Martina, this year we saw Serena Williams retiring. Do you think that marks the end of an era?
Well, if she still has been making some noises that she might play Australia, but I doubt it. Chances are she will not play. Chances are she's retired, and she and Roger retired practically within weeks of each other. And of course it's sad. We, you get so used to them. They've been around for 20 plus years, and we get spoiled with them. And Serena retiring again after she had her child Olympia, she still continued playing and kind of made it obvious to other women that they can have children and still have their athletic career.
That was such an achievement. That was a breakthrough.
So there are others. Margaret Court won a major after she gave birth. I think so did Yvonne Goolagong. So it has happened before, but Serena really brought it into the forefront. And maybe now some women athletes will have their child earlier in their 20s, so they can still compete into their 30s. It used to be you have to stop, then you have a child, and then you're done. So she definitely has put a major breakthrough on that for women athletes in every sport. And she transcended the sport. So it's a massive loss for our sport. But she hasn't played that much the last 3 or 4 years. But still, it was the chance that she would play now. I think that chance is gone. And it's a big hole. You can't replace somebody like Serena. You can't replace somebody like Roger Federer. But there's other players coming up that, different personalities, different styles, and different people to get excited about. But the shoes will never be filled.
Yeah, because also in tennis, of course, you're good. I mean, there are many great players, but the other side is this buoyance, this personality, basically. You people are figures, are characters, and people follow you, not because you're great players, but also because you're attractive. And so who do you see like becoming the next star in both sense? Because I don't know, Emma Raducanu, but then she hasn't been doing that great, or Naomi Osaka isn't doing that great. So what are they lacking, or who do you see coming?
Well, Coco Gauff has to be number one on that list. She's only 18. So she's been on the tour now for 4 years, but she's only 18, right? So there's still young. I think she's still gonna make another jump in her ability, because this is when you really make the biggest improvements in that age between like 16 and 21. That's where you make the big jumps for the most part. Maybe COVID kind of slowed that growth a little bit, but at the same time gives you a chance to experiment and do whatever. So now it's back to normal, and I think she's got the most upside potential. She's very strong mentally, and an amazing athlete and really good thinker. She likes to figure things out there. She's not afraid to get outside of her comfort zone. Needs to fix some things technically still with her forehand particularly, but it's gotten better. So she can only get better, and she's got a lot. She could have a 50. We could be talking about her 15 years from now. I'm still here. She's the number one for sure on that front. She's got a really good team of people around her, etc. Raducanu, look, she played a fantastic U.S. Open. She's played some good tennis since then, but it's been a bit tricky for her. So we'll see. I think she needs to. I think she needs to break from her father, quite frankly, and be on her own, take responsibility for herself. She's old enough to do that. 20, she'll be 21 this soon, I think, and needs to just take charge of her life. Nothing as drastic as me leaving my country at 18.
Yeah.
But still, I think she needs to kind of separate herself from her parents and go on her own and take charge of herself. Because look, I think that's part of the problem. So many players, they have everything done for them. Everything is done. Everything's arranged. They just have to show up and hit balls. Practice, the coach tells them everything. Then they play a match, and they're the ones that are making all the decisions, right? They have to figure it, but they're not used to it. So I think when I left, I drove myself in every tournament. I rented a car at the airport, and I drove. I had a map, and went to the hotel, and went to the courts. Booked my courts. I didn't have a coach for 6 years, actually. That's when René Richards started helping me at 81 that I got a coach. Between 75 and 81, I was coachless. So I did everything. So then when something goes wrong on the court, you figure it out because you've been figuring out off the court as well.
Wow, that's so interesting, because I was about to ask you what really does it mean to be mentally strong for a high performance athlete, for instance. And that probably also it's not just focus, but also what you're mentioning, and being able to be in charge of your life too.
Yeah, growing up in a communist country, that kind of toughens you up, and then of course again doing everything on my own. You have to take responsibility, and adjust and figure things out, and that gives you a lot of mental strength, I think, to come through when things don't go well. Been there, done that, right?
Mm. No, and do you think stakes are higher for current professional players, as there is so much money involved, the sponsors, and also something that you mentioned, so much exposure to social media?
Sure, it's different. Look, you have only so much energy, so you have to make sure that you save it for what's important, and the social media takes it out of you no matter what happens. Even just not getting on social media takes energy to not do it. Do not check your Instagram or your Twitter or whatever. But it's a nice way of connecting with the fans and being able to speak your mind without being censored by another writer or the TV station where they cut the interview, or the writer already has an image of who you are, and that's what they present to the world. Now you can present it yourself. So I think the fans have a much better idea of what everybody is. Stakes are higher, but look, you win one major, you're done. You can retire. Look at Emma Raducanu. She got millions and millions of endorsements after that, so she doesn't really have to lift a racket again. I won Wimbledon in '78. I got 17,000 pounds, and nobody cared. So I still had to work my butt off for many years after to make anywhere near what they're making now. So nice problem, right? Yes, there's the stress is just different. Everybody's got pressure. I'd say some players have pressure because they've never been in that situation at a major. They can't even afford a coach full time because they're not making enough money. Now they're playing in the round of 16 at Wimbledon. If they win the next match, they make $500,000, and that's gonna set them up for not just this year, but for a long time to get that coach to get better. That's pressure. Then the pressure from the players that are expected to win, like Serena Williams, anything but a win is a loss.
Yeah.
Is a failure. That's a different kind of pressure. So we all have our pressures. It's how you handle it, how you rise to it, and how you react to it. That makes a difference.
Mm. And you said something before, and I've heard that in another interview of yours, which I think is so beautiful, because a lot of people think that tennis is a very lonely game, but then you talk about the rival, that you're as good as the player that you have in front of you, and so there there is really a relationship there. There's a lot of energy coming back and forth. And you had your nemesis in Chris Evert, of course.
But who was one of my best friends now, and you saw it with Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal when Roger retired. You know, the relationship they have. So yes, they're your nemesis, but they make you better.
Yeah.
I became a better tennis player because of Chris Evert, and then Chris Evert became a better tennis player because of me. Because in tennis, you're only as good as your opponent makes you play. If I play with you, no,
No offense.
But yeah, I'm tested, right?
You will be terrible. You will be a terrible player.
Like a beginner. So you need that competition. You need that relationship. And it's very adversarial, but there is a net in between. So you only hit the ball that they hit. They're not directly hitting you like in boxing. But there is still that gladiatorial feel to it. But I think because you know how much it takes to get good, you have so much respect for your opponent, and you have that camaraderie that you don't get. Well, athletes have it anyway, but you get it particularly in tennis because of that relationship with the ball and the opponent.
That's beautiful. And can you tell us what are the biggest lessons that you have learned along your professional career?
Simplify. I think we women, particularly more than men, are maybe analyze too much. We want to make sure we have all the bases covered, that everything is important, and if we don't know all the answers, we don't even start on a task because we want to make sure we know it all ahead of time. Guys kind of barge in there, so you simplify. You simplify what's important. What is the most important thing in this project or in this match, and you concentrate on that. So I learned to know what's important. Don't sweat the small stuff, definitely, and stay in the solution. With tennis, you have to stay in the solution. Yeah, there's a problem. You know, I'm slow. Okay, what's the solution? You train so you get faster. It's very simple. It's very obvious. And so it is with other things. You need to know what's the most important thing within that particular project that you have or goal that you have, and you concentrate on that. And the rest is details. You know, everything else will kind of fall into place. But that crux has to be right. The core has to be right. The most important thing. It has to be, you have to have clarity so that you know which way to go. I think that's very important, because otherwise the mind gets muddled, and especially when things don't go well, you're like, it's all up there. You sit there, then you can't think at all. So zeroing in on the issue, forget the rest.
Is that what you will say, knowing that all that you know now, to the young Martina who was, I don't know, at age 8 or 9, you know, grabbing the racket for the first time?
Yeah, I think so. I say to you, what can you do today to make yourself a better tennis player? And you don't even have to play tennis to make yourself a better tennis player. There's other ways to do it, right? Whether it's physical, mental. We don't concentrate on the mental enough, although now I think people are paying more attention to the mental aspect of mental wellness of everything. I would tell that player, make sure you love the sport, because it's a really hard sport to be really good at. And what can you do today to achieve that goal? Yeah, it's really that simple. Make sure that you love it. Whatever you do, if you don't love it, change it, because life is definitely too short to stay in a job. You know, and if you have to have that money, so you suck it up for a couple of years, that's okay too, because you have a goal after that. You know, maybe if I make it up, then I can go paint. Paint houses or paint paintings. You know, you follow your passion. I was lucky enough that my passion made me money. So people go sometimes for the safe stuff, but it has to feed your soul. So I would say to that kid, does it feed your soul? Does it keep you interested? Do you love it? Is there a day where you don't want to play? There was never a day I didn't want to play tennis. You know? So, but I didn't play every day either. I knew when to take a break.
Yeah.
But it was always about becoming better. So to that kid, I would say, make sure you love it, make sure that it feeds your soul, and then see where it takes you. And that whatever the goal is, wherever your plateau is, that's okay. You gave it everything you had, right? So there's nothing to be ashamed of, as long as you just put it all on the line. People sometimes don't put it all on the line, because when you don't get to that goal that you have, it hurts. It hurts like hell. When you really give it everything and you still lose, it hurts. So people they don't really want to try that hard, because then they have an out.
Exactly.
pain is less. Oh, I didn't really try. I could have worked harder. I could have studied more. I could have run more. It's okay. It's no big deal. So, you lessen your pain, right? But then you obviously don't achieve because you didn't quite give it everything you had.
Yeah, it has to hurt. And so how would you like to be remembered in terms of your contribution to tennis and to society, I would say, as a whole?
I'd just like to be remembered.
Well, then check.
How long, how many generations will remember you? Because in personal life, it's maybe the grandparents but your kids only know what you told them. They never met the grandparents. So it really disappears within 3 generations. You're done. And I was thinking about this the other day. How long will people remember how I played tennis? I don't know, but, I won't know. I always said I would like to be, I feel I've played tennis the way I think it ought to be played, or it could be played, with flair, with passion, with love. And, just, I always proactive. I always try to make things happen. I don't wait for things to come to me. So I always went for it, and I always try to help the little guy.
Well, I think we have come to an end, and I really want to thank you wholeheartedly because it has been fun, inspiring. You're so generous sharing all these stories with us. Really, thank you so much, and best of luck, Martina.
Thank you, Consuela. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Y bueno, a ustedes también. Como siempre, muchas gracias por habernos acompañado en este capítulo especial de fin de año de edición de Líderes. Sigan muy atentos a todos los contenidos de este espacio, sumándose a la comunidad de Itaú Chile a través de sus cuentas y sus canales en redes sociales. Que estén muy, pero muy bien y será hasta la próxima.